Hello and welcome back to Pharmacist Diaries and episode 2 of a series of podcasts that we're doing about consultant pharmacists and the pathway it takes to become a consultant pharmacist in the UK. We are on episode 2 where we're going to be talking about the common specialities that exist for consultant pharmacists, but also we're going to look at some of the opportunities that they bring to us, some of the challenges that come along the way, and what the future looks like. What are the emerging roles that you could get into if you were interested in following this pathway? Do you ever feel like your body is sending you error messages, but you can't read the manual? You're not alone. That happens to me too. I am a pharmacist by background, and I'm excited to tell you about a product called Metabolic Gold. It's like a universal translator for your body. Maybe your cholesterol is acting up, or your blood sugar is on a roller coaster, or your digestive system is doing the cha-cha. Metabolic Gold speaks all those languages. With its unique blend of bergamot, artichoke, and baobab, it's got your back, and your front, and your insides. Are you ready to decode your body's signals? Grab Metabolic Gold from the Naked Pharmacy and use code PD20 for 20% off your purchase. Problem solved? Mystery cracked. I'm really excited because today I get to introduce Sital Shah to the podcast. She is a consultant pharmacist at King's College Hospital's NHS Trust, and her specialist area is hepatology. I'm not going into massive amounts of detail introducing her because I will allow her to do her own introduction today on the podcast, so let's introduce her. Hey, hello and welcome to Pharmacist Diaries.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to kind of kickstart this series. Episode 1, we talked about the general kind of role of a consultant pharmacist. We talked about the framework and the 5 specialist areas that you need to consider when you're pursuing this area of practice. Mm-hmm. And Takeshi very kindly talked about her own pathway into pediatrics and respiratory. So we talked about the clinical skills, the competencies, but today I want to talk about the actual specialist areas because people may be considering what specialist area they actually want to get into and what exists already. Mm-hmm. So maybe we can first talk about your journey, where you tell us a little bit of a story about yourself and why you chose hepatology and also why you became a consultant pharmacist as well.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take you way back to when I was at school. Way back, no. I always had an interest in science. I really liked biology, chemistry, etc. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I obviously, as a South Asian, had lots of pharmacists in my family. I knew I didn't want to do medicine, dentistry. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to go into basic science. And I thought, what am I going to do with that? And I spoke to a couple of my aunties that work in community pharmacies, and they're like, why don't you, do a pharmacy degree, see what you like. There's research involved. There's all the things that you tell me, you like, you can do that as a pharmacist. I thought, okay, great. My only interaction with pharmacy at that point was working as a Saturday job kind of kid in my local chemist, selling stuff. I didn't really understand what pharmacy was at that point. But throughout the years, I had lots of kind of summer placements. So I did kind of 10 weeks at GSK looking at research and development of inhalers. I did a placement at the National Institute of Medical Research looking at malaria and developing vaccines. And I just thought, you know what, I love research. I really want to do this as a pharmacist. How am I going to do it? Enter pre-registration. I got a really good placement in a large hospital trust. And I stayed there as a resident and I rotated around. And that's when I actually really started to love hospital pharmacy. I actually really enjoyed all my rotations. I liked acute medicine. I did a lot of, I actually did a project looking at patients with alcohol-related liver disease and abstinence and things like that. And that was as a very junior pharmacist. I had no idea I liked hepatology at that point. I really enjoyed MI, so medicines information. And then finally a role at King's came up as a rotational 7. So I moved all the way down to South London. I commuted for 2 hours almost every day, each way. And I rotated around. I started in clinical nutrition. I went through clinical services. I gained lots of skills around service development, and kind of planning clinical services. So I knew I kind of like clinical at this point. And then finally I rotated into hepatology, and that's where it started. I was very fortunate to have a mentor as my manager, frankly. She was amazing. And I was in a really lucky position where all of a sudden, all these curative therapies for hepatitis C sort of came to market. And that's when a lot of investment went into pharmacy and hiring pharmacists, pharmacy technicians to run that kind of viral hepatitis service. So I stuck around, I got promoted in order to kind of lead on that service. And I kind of continued, I broadened my horizons. There's there's so many subspecialities within hepatology that I just kind of decided which one I liked. I liked autoimmune liver disease. I really integrated with various MDTs at the trust, which I will talk to later, but it's so important to integrate into your MDT if you kind of want to progress. And I wanted to do more research. And I say muscled into some research groups, so with our consultant and some of the junior doctors, and I started to do very basic data collection things. And then I sort of applied for a master's in pharmacy practice by research. And at that point, I knew I really enjoyed research and was considering the PhD side of things. But, life happened and I couldn't do both, and COVID happened. And for me, actually, COVID was almost a good time for my career because I got time to do my research. I had nothing better to do than look at spreadsheets when we were locked down. So I did a research project and it was around autoimmune hepatitis. And then at that point I was like, what next? Because, we're always itching to do something. And I spoke to my manager and some of my sort of peers in other hospitals and thought, hang on a minute, I should probably look at the consultant portfolio. I was always kind of working towards the framework, so the advanced pharmacy framework. And I thought, let me see what's next. What is the consultant pharmacist portfolio? How do I get there? And at the time, my manager just became a consultant pharmacist in hepatology. So I had someone that I could just go to and ask all my questions. And then I started with a portfolio and I just plugged in things that I was doing on a daily basis. What I really like about being a consultant pharmacist is that you're not only a specialist in your clinical area, but you get to hone in on leadership skills. You get to work on a regional level, a national level. You get to know your network, and that's so important to get to know them, because as a consultant pharmacist, you can't really progress on a regional, on a national level if you don't have people around you kind of along on your journey. So I interviewed. So my manager, who was a consultant pharmacist at the time, got a different job and a position became available. I wasn't ready for it. The interview was horrendous, but I went for it. But I was fortunate the panel saw something in me and I got what was called a progression post. And I highly recommend them. So I wasn't team leader, which, comes with its own tasks. And I don't think I could have done my portfolio as well as I did if I was a team leader. But instead, this kind of interim job was kind of honing in on those areas of the standards or that the consultant portfolio has and working on them. So developing I had certain objectives to meet. So developing new clinics, new services, and expanding certain areas. And I did that for a couple of years and finally pushed through my portfolio and got credentialed.
Woohoo!
So that was a whistle-stop tour and there was lots of bumps along the way. I made it sound quite smooth. It wasn't, but it was definitely worth it.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. And in fact, it's really interesting because you have followed quite a traditional pathway as a hospital pharmacist. You've done that residency, you've done the diploma. And for some people, once they do their independent prescribing, they don't necessarily go for that additional MSc. But for you and Sakeshi, because Sakeshi's also done a similar one, that research piece has really lifted your career journey and helped you to realize that you can become mastery level in the area of expertise that you're in. So it's really interesting to show that side of who you are. It's also making me think about myself because obviously I work in pediatrics. I've been working in palliative care. And my next step was to either sign up to the pediatric palliative care diploma or master's. They have one specifically. They actually have one in South Bank, which is local to where we are today. and see how I can level up as a specialist pharmacist utilizing more education. And for us, it's easy to kind of fall into more education. We're used to it. We don't find it too overwhelming as hospital pharmacists. In fact, we enjoy it. We thrive, a lot of us, in overwhelming ourselves with the whole work-life balance, education, trying to do our jobs. Like a lot of us have, families and children at home. So balancing all of that can be quite challenging. So it's really interesting to kind of see your journey. And hepatology is a really interesting area of practice. I was exposed to it a little bit during my residency, and I worked with an amazing specialist pharmacist at that time. And the whole medical side of kind of pharmacy is something I'm much more interested in compared to surgery. But obviously your role will have a mix of both, seeing as liver transplant is a big part of adult care as well with liver disease. I kind of want to strip back to the basics and think about people who are starting their journey into specialization and what the kind of common areas that we're seeing emerging with consultant pharmacist roles.
Yeah, so what's really nice is it's emerging. So I think previously the more common ones were things like antimicrobials, critical care, cardiovascular disease, things that really affect the wider population or the bigger population, whereas hepatology is actually quite niche in itself. Gastroenterology is a bit bigger than hepatology. Not as many centres do hepatology or have specialist services. So, and I think the more common ones they're excellent because you can transfer your skills across any hospital. I'm a bit limited, to be honest, within King's because that is such a great centre for liver disease and one of the only ones within London that's that big. So those are the more common ones. But what's really lovely is when you are a consultant pharmacist, you've got skills outside of clinical. You can move different specialities. So I had a colleague who was a hepatology pharmacist in Cambridge, and he's now a consultant pharmacist in genomics. So it just shows that even if you do specialise down one road, there's no saying you can't change, you can't move. So genomics is up and coming, really interesting. Immunology, allergy, kind of, and even within a speciality. So I'm pure kind of hepatology, medical hepatology. And it's not to say I'm not an expert in transplantation. And there's no reason why in the same trust you can't have multiple consultant pharmacists in the same area. Because I think that's a common sort of misconception is that if you've got one in kind of one team, that's it. Well, no, there's multiple medical doctors, multiple consultants. So actually, there's so many, there can be multiple consultant pharmacists within one field. And that's great because you want more people to work with then. And my manager, who was a consultant pharmacist in hepatology, is now doing emergency planning. And she's still a consultant pharmacist because she's got all those skills about leadership, management, research. So I think if anyone's sort of thinking, oh, there's no one that's specialised in, I don't know, myeloma, I'm sure there is a consultant pharmacist with multiple myeloma somewhere. There is no reason why you can't kind of establish yourself as a consultant pharmacist in a very niche field. There are more and more drugs coming out every kind of, I don't know, every month almost it feels. And the world's your oyster. I reckon there'll be consultant pharmacists in AI in the future, in all sorts of different weird and wonderful things that you would never have thought of kind of 10 years ago. And it's expanding. So it's a really good time.
And this series, the pharmacists who are coming on this series are all hospital specialists. But of course, you can use this pathway to become a consultant pharmacist in a GP practice, for example.
And we need them. Our role is much wider than the hospital we work in. I work with ICBs, with GPs, with pharmacists in GP practices, with community pharmacists. And it'll be great to see the consultant role expanding in those areas, for sure.
We have a pharmacist coming in this series who works across primary and secondary care, and intermediate care as well. Really, so 3 areas. So I'm looking forward to hearing her journey. So if people are listening, tune into those episodes. You've made your journey sound quite like an easy journey, like you said, that everything kind of flowed well, but there must have been some challenges or some speed bumps that you kind of overcame during that time. Maybe you can share some of that part of your journey with us.
Yeah. So along the way of so my move to King's, I had applied for a rotational 7 when there was only 3 different kind of specialities to choose from. And when I got there, I was put into aseptics, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute, I applied for a clinical rotational 7 job. They're like, oh, we've got a new rotation. It's called clinical nutrition. It's not really well developed. Here you go. And I was like, oh, I'm a brand new band 7. I'd only really done residency before. I didn't know what service development was. But I made the most of it, and it was probably one of the best rotations I had. And it was tough. I was new to the trust. I didn't know anyone. I worked very closely with the nurse and the consultants, as well as the kind of aseptic pharmacist, but no one had really done it before. So I was just making my own way and hoping for the best. And it was incredibly challenging, but so rewarding at the same time. I then when I did end up in the liver team and I was doing my research, which was a face-to-face kind of course, COVID hit. So I deferred my master's for about a year because it was too much. I was on COVID wards, covering critical care, not really doing anything liver related, no time for data collection or anything like that. That was hard. COVID was really hard, both mentally and professionally. And I was team leader as well for the liver team because my manager went on mat leave. So I was trying to kind of look after a team, but I was working in critical care covering COVID wards, and that was hard. But anyway, things got back on track. I restarted my master's. And at that point, I didn't actually know where to go after that. So I did want to become a consultant pharmacist. I didn't really think there would be room for 2 consultant pharmacists in the same team. So I struggled. Like I didn't actually know what to do next. But fortunately, I guess, that consultant pharmacist moved on and there was a gap, and I sort of made a case of, I know I'm not ready, but I would really like to progress. So some of those were kind of my work-based challenges. And I'm not going to talk about my personal life, but you've got to kind of take those things into account. And there were points in my career where actually my personal life was more important. And, I couldn't do, I don't encourage people not to have a good work-life balance, but I did do a lot of my research in my own time. And there was a point where I just couldn't do it anymore because I had other things going on. And that's okay because you're on your own timeline. And I learned not to compare myself to everyone else. And that was really important. And then I think lastly, what really got me through was the network of people that I had around me. And most of them were outside of the hospital. They were, obviously I had my friends and family, but they were my peers across the country. I had really good support for research kind of related things in Scotland from some of my colleagues there who, were like, Sital, don't worry, you'll get published. We'll work on your paper. The consultants, I've got a really good relationship with some of my consultant colleagues who have been my mentors, actually. Pharmacy technicians, I cannot speak highly of them. And I recently got back in touch with one of them after 7 years. And they've really supported me when I found things challenging. I've gone back to my old managers to say, I really failed this interview as for the consultant pharmacist post. What do I do? Where do I go next? And it's the people around me and the friends that I made throughout all my years, from being a band 6 to now, that have really come kind of to support me when I really needed it.
You've come full circle.
I've come full circle.
The consultant pathway is, for everyone, seems to be a very individual journey. You can't just put a time on it that, it takes a year and a half on average to do your portfolio. Everyone's journey is completely different. There are environmental kind of things that are out of our control, such as the pandemic, that happen that stop us from being able to do certain things or change the trajectory of what we're doing within that moment. And like you said, with personal lives, there are always going to be ups and downs, whether maybe you get married, maybe there's a pregnancy, maybe there's grief, that you go through in your life. So I think one of the most important things to kind of say when it comes to following this pathway is accept that there will be ups and downs, and accept that it may take you a lot longer than you'd like, and that it is a long game.
Yeah.
If you're going to kind of have clinical expertise and mastery to that level, you don't actually want to rush the journey. You want to be able to take your time and learn all the elements from it, because it's not just about the clinical expertise. It is about leadership. It is about research. It is about education. It is about doing things on a national or global scale as well. And you need time to immerse yourself into the environment, into your MDT, to allow you to experience all of that so that you can be that best version of you. And it sounds like you've had a really awesome journey overall. Of course, there are challenges, but when you look back, you must feel really proud of yourself that you've come this far. And think about the fact that you've got people in your team who see you as a role model. Mm-hmm. You're inspiring those junior pharmacists who rotate through your area of expertise, or those training pharmacists who see you and envision themselves doing what you do several years down the line. And that feels good.
That feels great.
That feels so good when you're a pharmacist, when you teach other people because you've got that expertise, that knowledge, that experience, and you give back to your own community. Mm-hmm. And that's what pharmacy is all about. And this is kind of, why we're showcasing what we're doing in the first place. But it's just nice to see where you've come and where you've come from. And it's nice to know that you had that basic foundation. You rotated to so many different areas. You tried to experience different specialist areas to see where you fit in. And different projects and experiences, or the little bits of research that you did as a junior pharmacist, have obviously impacted the choices that you've made further down the line. And you have been really fortunate to work with another consultant pharmacist who's obviously inspired you and motivated you to say, actually, I can do this and I'm going to do it. And then kind of taking over their job, which is cool. I love that. That's really cool. My last question to you really is, I guess, when you're looking at specialization, what advice do you have to pharmacists who are thinking about this? Like junior pharmacists who are only a few years into their kind of practice, they may be still in a band 7 rotational pharmacist role, going through different areas of expertise. What advice do you have for them?
So I think play the field, rotate around. It took me a while to figure out what I really enjoyed. And when you do figure that out, great. Immerse yourself in it. Obviously, you'll know your team, you will shadow, and you'll do all those things. But like I said, you need to kind of think a bit outwards. So get to know your MDT. Now more than ever, pharmacists are not working in silos. We are not just working in the pharmacy department. We are integrating within the MDT. Get to know your nurses, your consultants, your physios, your dietitians. Get to know them all. They will teach you all sorts of different things. And I'm not just talking clinically. They will teach you different skills, people skills. And once you've figured that out, it's really important you join at that kind of professional group that is going to champion you and your profession. So I'm part of the British Hepatology Pharmacy Group, and I'm chair of it now. And I started as just a committee member, and then I moved up as a secretary, etc. And we've created such a strong network now of pharmacists, pharmacy technicians working within hepatology, that I can go to any one of them and say, well, actually, what are you doing in your hospital? Do you have this? What cost savings are you doing? Can I have your guidelines? And that's really useful, and they will support you when the time comes to do various things you need to do if you want to progress up. I think within a consultant pharmacist role, research and education, they are really important. So even if you think, I'm just a band 7, I can't deliver a talk to M-Pharms, you can. And you should put yourself forward for opportunities. People might not think of you, so you do have to kind of go for it yourself and say, actually, I can do that. I want experience in that. Will it be okay if I kind of try to deliver this talk this time around and get trained up to do it? So those are the kind of things I did as a band 7. So we teach at KCL, and I get really nervous doing public speaking, and I was like, no, let me just do it. I know more than the M-Pharm 3s. It can't be that bad. And so start there, seize all the opportunities that you can get, network. There's UK CPA, there's all sorts of things that you could be part of. And finally get to know kind of that consultant body as well. You need to be able to influence your general managers, your consultants, kind of to do your service development side of things, and also get to know the regional kind of national networks. And it seems impossible as a band 7, but what I've learned is my manager used to pull me into these meetings with her. I would just sit there, I would observe. Sometimes I'd ask, do you have any of these sorts of meetings coming up? I'd really love to know what you guys talk about. Go for those opportunities, because there's lots out there, but you kind of do have to put yourself forward for it.
I love that. And so many things kind of resonate with me when I was doing my paediatric palliative care role here at the Evelina. You immerse yourself so much into the MDT that sometimes you don't even see other pharmacists because you are that immersed into that environment. And in fact, I moved my desk from pharmacy into the palliative care area because it was just so nice to be part of that little family. And pharmacy is my family. Of course, pharmacy is my family. But when you start becoming the lead pharmacist in your specialist area, embedding yourself in that environment and learning from those consultants as well as the nurses really helps to drive you forward and makes you feel part of that team, which obviously from what you're saying, you've done that. And Sukeshi also mentioned being part of groups. I mean, she talks about the neonatal and pediatric pharmacy group that she is heavily involved with. There are subgroups within that with different specialties. So she's obviously getting involved with the respiratory side of things. She's chairing on national organizations like you are. So all of these things are part of the leadership journey, part of the education journey, and also building that expertise in terms of research, because you will be publishing things on a national, if not global scale. So of course, all of these things are going to take time. But what I'd also recommend is follow your passions in terms of what you like doing. So you loved research and you embedded yourself into those areas of expertise from an early stage as a band 7. And if you're one of these people that likes education and training, find those opportunities to teach other people, because it will help you build the kind of knowledge, the experience and the confidence to actually go out there and do it. And that's kind of key. I've loved having our conversation. It's so good because this is the first time we've really met each other in real life, not virtual life. So it was so nice to hear your story. It's extremely inspiring. You've done so well with your journey. And, I feel really inspired myself to hear your journey. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to episode 2 of this awesome series. I hope that you learned a little bit more about all the specialist areas that are on offer for consultant pharmacists, and as well as the emerging areas that are coming out. Every single consultant pharmacist is going through a different journey. You've heard from Sital that she's had some challenges, some speed bumps that she's had to overcome, but she's made it, and so can you. Tune in to episode 3, where we're going to be talking a lot about work-life balance, because this journey is tough. It takes a long time, and we definitely want you to immerse yourself into the environment, but without having a lot of stress, without having that burnout piece. And our good friend Joe is going to talk all about that, so tune in the next few days. Are you seeking natural ways to maintain your health? Meet The Naked Pharmacy, Europe's first plant-powered online pharmacy, dedicated to offering scientifically proven natural remedies and supplements. The Naked Pharmacy believes in the power of plants. By using high concentrations of plant actives, they help individuals stay fit and healthy or address illnesses naturally and without the side effects. Their range of supplements is formulated with unique high concentration ingredients at effective strengths. Modern research supports the idea that such supplements can prevent and relieve illnesses effectively. Their supplements offer significant health benefits and can generally be used safely alongside your conventional medicines. If you want to discover the power of nature with the Naked Pharmacy and take a step towards a healthier you, head on over to their website, thenakedpharmacy.com. As a gift from me to you, you can get 20% off your purchase using discount code PD20.